over this plant as renders it a hemisphere, and that, as one may say, turned accurately in a lathe, and having its notches extant above it, which, as I said, grow like a pomegranate, only that they are sharp, and end in nothing but prickles. Now the fruit is preserved by this coat of the calyx, which fruit is like the seed of the herb sideratus. It sends out a flower that may seem to resemble that of a poppy. Of this was a crown made, as far from the hinder part of the head to each of the temples. But this Ephialus, for so this calyx may be called, did not cover the forehead, but was covered with a golden plate, which had inscribed upon it the name of God in sacred characters. And such were the ornaments of the high priest. Now here one may wonder at the ill will which men bear to us, and which they profess to bear on account of our despising that deity which they pretend to honor. For if any one do not consider the fabric of the tabernacle, and take a view of the garments of the high priest, and of those vessels which we make use of in our sacred ministration, he will find that our legislator was a divine man, and that we are unjustly reproached by others. For if any one do without prejudice, and with judgment look upon these things, he will find they are every one made in way of imitation and representation of the universe. When Moses distinguished the tabernacle into 3 parts, and allowed 2 of them to the priests, as a place accessible and common, he denoted the land and the sea, these being of general access to all; but he set apart the 3rd division for God, because heaven is inaccessible to men. And when he ordered 12 loaves to be set on the table, he denoted the year, as distinguished into so many months. By branching out the candlestick into 70 parts, he secretly imitated the decani, or 70 divisions of the planets. And as to the 7 lamps upon the candlesticks, they referred to the course of the planets, of which that is the number. The veils, too, which were composed of 4 things, they declared the 4 elements. For the fine linen was proper to signify the earth, because the flax grows out of the earth; the purple signified the sea, because that color is dyed by the blood of a sea shellfish; the blue is fit to signify the air, and the scarlet will naturally be an indication of fire. Now the vestment of the high priest being made of linen signified the earth; the blue denoted the sky, being like lightning in its pomegranates, and in the noise of the bells resembling thunder. And for the ephod, it showed that God had made the universe of 4 elements; and as for the gold interwoven, I suppose it related to the splendor by which all things are enlightened. He also appointed the breastplate to be placed in the middle of the ephod, to resemble the earth, for that has the very middle place of the world; and the girdle which encompassed the high priest round signified the ocean, for that goes round and includes the universe. Each of the sardonyxes declares to us the sun and the moon; those, I mean, that were in the nature of buttons on the high priest's shoulders. And for the 12 stones, whether we understand by them the months, or whether we understand the like number of the signs of that circle which the Greeks call the zodiac, we shall not be mistaken in their meaning. And for the mitre, which was of a blue color, it seems to me to mean heaven; for how otherwise could the name of God be inscribed upon it? That it was also illustrated with a crown, and that of gold also, is because of that splendor with which God is pleased. Let this explication suffice at present, since the course of my narration will often, and on many occasions, afford me the opportunity of enlarging upon the virtue of our legislator. CHAPTER 8. Of the Priesthood of Aaron. When what has been described was brought to a conclusion, gifts not being yet presented, God appeared to Moses, and enjoined him to bestow the high priesthood upon Aaron his brother, as upon him that best of them all deserved to obtain that honor, on account of his virtue. And when he had gathered the multitude together, he gave them an account of Aaron's virtue, and of his good will to them, and of the dangers he had undergone for their sakes. Upon which, when they had given testimony to him on all respects, and showed their readiness to receive him, Moses said to them, O you Israelites, this work is already brought to a conclusion in a manner most acceptable to God, and according to our abilities. And now since you see that he is received into this tabernacle, We shall first of all stand in need of one that may officiate for us, and may minister to the sacrifices, and to the prayers that are to be put up for us. And indeed, had the inquiry after such a person been left to me, I should have thought myself worthy of this honor, both because all men are naturally fond of themselves, and because I am conscious to myself that I have taken a great deal of pains for your deliverance. But now God himself has determined that Aaron is worthy of this honor, and has chosen him for his priest, as knowing him to be the most righteous person among you; so that he is to put on the vestments which are consecrated to God, he is to have the care of the altars, and to make provision for the sacrifices; and he it is that must put up prayers for you to God, who will readily hear them, not only because he is himself solicitous for your nation, but also because he will receive them as offered by one that he hath himself chosen to this office." The Hebrews were pleased with what was said, and they gave their approbation to him whom God had ordained; for Aaron was of them all the most deserving of this honor, on account of his own stock and gift of prophecy, and his brother's virtue. He had at that time 4 sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Now Moses commanded them to make use of all the utensils which were more than were necessary to the structure of the tabernacle, for covering the tabernacle itself, the candlestick and the altar of incense and the other vessels, that they might not be at all hurt when they journeyed, either by rain or by the rising of the dust. And when he had gathered the multitude together again, he ordered that they should offer half a shekel for every man, as an oblation to God, which shekel is a piece among the Hebrews, and is equal to 4 Athenian drachmae. Whereupon they readily obeyed what Moses had commanded, and the number of the offerers was 605,550. Now this money that was brought by the men that were free was given by such as were about 20 years old, but under 50, and what was collected was spent in the uses of the tabernacle. Moses now purified the tabernacle and the priests, which purification was performed after the following manner. He commanded them to take 500 shekels of choice myrrh, an equal quantity of cassia, and half the foregoing weight of cinnamon and calamus, this last is a sort of sweet spice, to beat them small, and wet them with a hin of oil of olives (a hin is our own country measure, and contains 2 Athenian koahs, or conguises), then mix them together, and boil them, and prepare them after the art of the apothecary, and make them into a very sweet ointment, and afterward to take it to anoint and purify the priests themselves, and all the tabernacle, as also the sacrifices. There were also many, and those of various kinds, of sweet spices, that belonged to the tabernacle, and such as were of very great price, and were brought to the golden altar of incense, the nature of which I do not now describe, lest it should be troublesome to my readers; but incense was to be offered twice a day, both before sun rising and at sun setting. They were also to keep oil ready purified for the lamps, 3 of which were to give light all day long upon the sacred candlestick before God, and the rest were to be lighted at the evening. Now all was finished. Bezaleel and Aholiab appeared to be the most skillful of the workmen, for they invented finer works than what others had done before them, and were of great abilities to join notions of what they were formerly ignorant of; and of these Bezaleel was judged to be the best. Now the whole time they were about this work was the interval of 7 months, and after this it was that was ended the first year since their departure out of Egypt. But at the beginning of the 2nd year, on the month Xanthicus, as the Macedonians call it, but on the month Nisan, as the Hebrews call it, on the new moon, they consecrated the tabernacle, and all its vessels, which I have already described. Now God showed himself pleased with the work of the Hebrews, and did not permit their labors to be in vain, nor did he disdain to make use of what they had made, but he came and sojourned with them, and pitched his tabernacle in the holy house; and in the following manner did he come to it. The sky was clear, but there was a mist over the tabernacle only, encompassing it, but not with such a very deep and thick cloud as is seen in the winter season,